The war had lasted for 97 years, and the Confederation was losing. I stood on the observation deck of the command vessel Eternal Grace and watched another world burn. The planet below had been home to 60 million of his people just 3 days ago. Now it was nothing but fire and ash, and the crawling shapes of drones picking through the ruins for survivors to drag back to the hive ships. Was old by standards. His translucent skin had grown pale and thin with age. His 4 amber eyes had seen too much death. He remembered a time before the swarm had come, a time when his people built great cities and explored the stars with wonder instead of fear. That time felt like a dream now. Said fleet commander from behind him, "We have received word from the science cast. They believe the device is ready." Did not turn around. He kept his eyes on the burning world below. "And you trust them?" "I trust nothing anymore, but we have no other options." This was true. The fleet had been reduced to less than 100 vessels. They had thousands. Every battle ended the same way. They fought bravely and died quickly, and the swarm moved on to the next system. It was not a war anymore. It was an extinction. The device I spoke of had been found in the ruins of a civilization that had died long before they learned to walk upright. The science cast had spent decades studying it and had finally determined its purpose. It was a beacon, a signal that could reach across the entire galaxy and beyond. The ancient texts that came with it spoke of warriors from a distant world, beings of terrible power who could be summoned in times of desperate need. The texts also carried warnings. The world these warriors came from was marked with symbols that translated roughly to forbidden and death, and do not wake them. Had read those warnings many times. He had debated with the council for months about whether to activate the beacon. Some argued that summoning unknown aliens was madness. Others pointed out that they were already facing extinction, and madness was all they had left. In the end, the decision was simple: die with certainty or risk the unknown. They chose to risk. "Activate it," said quietly. The beacon fired from a research station hidden in the outer reaches of space. It sent a pulse of energy outward in all directions, carrying a message encoded in mathematics and images and sound. The message was simple: "We are dying. We need help. Please come." Then they waited. 3 weeks passed. They continued their advance. 2 more colony worlds fell. The council began to lose hope that anyone had heard their call or that anyone would answer even if they had. Then the sensors lit up. Was in his quarters when the alarm sounded. He rushed to the command deck and found a staring at a display screen with an expression he had never seen on her face before. It took him a moment to recognize it as fear. "What is it?" he demanded. Pointed at the screen. "Ships, hundreds of them, they just appeared at the edge of the system." Looked at the display. The sensor data showed a massive formation of vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They were not. The energy signatures were completely different. The ship designs were blocky and angular, and made of solid metal rather than the organic hulls the swarm used. "How many?" asked. 437 confirmed. More are still arriving. 400 ships. The entire fleet was less than 100. Whoever these newcomers were, they had brought an armada. "They are hailing us," said the communications officer. "Put it through." The main flickered, and then displayed an image that made everyone on the command deck take a step backward. The being on the screen was bipedal with 2 arms and 2 eyes set in a forward-facing position like a predator. Its skin was a strange pinkish color, and it had a patch of dark hair on top of its head. When it opened its mouth to speak, saw rows of flat teeth with sharp points at the corners. The creature spoke in a language the translator struggled to process. After a moment, broken words came through. "This is Admiral Jake of the United Earth Defense Fleet. You called. We answered. Point us at your enemy." Found his voice with difficulty. "You received our beacon." 3 weeks ago. We have been traveling at maximum speed ever since." The creature, the human, leaned forward slightly. Your message said you were at war. Our sensors are picking up a large hostile fleet approximately 40 light years from here. Is that them? Yes, the swarm. They have been attacking our worlds for almost a century. The human nodded. This seemed to be a gesture of understanding. Tell me about them. Numbers, tactics, weaknesses if you know any. I will send you all the data we have. But I must ask, why did you come? Our beacon was a desperate plea. We did not expect anyone to answer, let alone send a fleet of this size. The human's expression changed slightly. The corners of its mouth turned upward, revealing more of those predator teeth. Later learned this expression was called a smile. Your beacon hit our deep space network, Jake said. It triggered protocols we put in place centuries ago. When someone calls for help, we answer. That is what we do. But you do not know us. You owe us nothing. No, but we know what it is like to face extinction. Our ancestors nearly wiped themselves out more than once. We survived because we learned to fight together, to protect each other, to never give up even when everything seemed hopeless. The human's eyes grew hard. You sent a call into the void hoping someone would hear. We heard, and we brought everything we had. Looked at the sensor display again. The human fleet was still arriving. The ships were enormous by standards, bristling with weapons and radiating power signatures that dwarfed anything in the Confederation's arsenal. What do you need from us? Asked. Information, star charts, everything you know about we will handle the rest. And what do you want in return? The human seemed surprised by the question. Nothing, you asked for help, we are here to help, that is all. Did not know how to respond to this. In his experience, no one did anything without expecting something in return, but the human seemed sincere, and at this point they had nothing left to lose. Very well, Admiral. I will transmit everything we have, and I hope for both our sakes that your confidence is not misplaced. It is not, Jake said simply. Now let us get to work. You have been fighting alone for too long. That ends today. The transmission ended, stood in silence for a long moment, staring at the had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The shuttle from the human flagship landed in the docking bay of the station with a heavy thud that shook the deck plates. Noticed immediately that the vessel was built differently from anything he had ever seen. It was made of thick metal with no curves or elegance to its design. It looked like a weapon given the ability to fly. The ramp lowered and two humans walked out. The first was a female with short brown hair and gray eyes that moved constantly, taking in every detail of the docking bay. She wore a dark uniform with symbols on the shoulders that assumed indicated rank. The second was a male, taller and broader, with a relaxed posture that somehow made him seem more dangerous rather than less. He carried himself like a creature that had never needed to fear anything in its life. The guards stationed around the bay shifted nervously. Some reached for their weapons without thinking. The female human noticed this and stopped walking. She held up her hands with the palms facing outward. Easy, she said. We come in peace. I am Commander Lisa Grant. This is Lieutenant Ben Cooper. We are here to meet with your council. Stepped forward. I am High. Welcome to the Confederation. He tried to keep his voice steady, but it was difficult. Standing this close to the humans, he could feel the weight of their presence. They radiated heat like furnaces. Their movements were quick and precise. Even standing still, they seemed coiled and ready to explode into action. Thank you for receiving us, Lisa said. Admiral sends his regards. He is coordinating fleet positions but wanted us to begin the briefing immediately. Of course, please follow me. They walked through the corridors of the station toward the council chamber. Noticed that every they passed either froze in place or quickly moved out of the way. Some pressed themselves against the walls. A young technician dropped his data pad and fled around a corner. Ben noticed this and chuckled softly. We are scaring your people. You must understand, said carefully. We have never encountered a species like yours before. Our scientists have been analyzing your transmissions and your biological data. The results are disturbing." "Disturbing how?" Lisa asked. "Your Earth, you call it. The data suggests it is a Category 12 planet." "What does that mean?" Struggled to find the right words. "Our classification system rates planets based on how hostile they are to life. Category 1 is ideal, stable climate, abundant resources, minimal predators. Most inhabited worlds in the known galaxy fall between Category 1 and Category 5. He paused. Category 12 is the highest rating. It means a world so dangerous that intelligent life should not be able to evolve there at all. Ben grinned at this. The expression showed his teeth and several nearby flinched. "Sounds about right. Earth tried to kill us pretty much every day for a few million years. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, ice ages, asteroid impacts. You name it, we survived it." Hal asked, "How did you survive a world like that?" Lisa answered, "We adapted. We learned. We got stronger and smarter and meaner. By the time we figured out fire, we had already outlasted most of the things that wanted to eat us. By the time we reached the stars, nothing in the universe could scare us anymore." They reached the council chamber. The other members of the High Council were already assembled, sitting in a semicircle of raised seats. They watched the humans enter with expressions ranging from curiosity to terror. Lisa and Ben stood in the center of the chamber. They did not seem intimidated by the arrangement. If anything, they looked bored. "Let us begin," said as he took his seat. "We have provided your fleet with all available data on the swarm. What are your initial assessments?" Lisa activated a small device on her wrist. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing a map of the region with positions marked in red. The swarm operates on a hive structure. Multiple queens coordinate through some kind of psychic link. Kill a queen and the drones in her command lose cohesion. Kill enough queens and the whole swarm falls apart. "We know this," said Elle from her seat. "We have tried to target the queens many times. Their ships are too well protected. Our weapons cannot penetrate their defenses." "Ours can," Ben said simply. Elle's eyes narrowed. "You sound very confident for someone who has never faced thee in battle." Ben shrugged. "We reviewed your combat footage. The swarm relies on numbers and aggression. They overwhelm enemies through sheer weight of bodies. It is a good strategy against prey species." He smiled again. "But we are not prey." "What makes you so certain?" "Because we have been the apex predator on our world for 100,000 years. We did not get there by running away from things with big teeth and sharp claws. We got there by hunting them down and killing them. They are just another predator. Bigger and uglier than most, but nothing we have not dealt with before." The council members exchanged uncertain glances, leaned forward. "Commander Grant, I must be honest with you. We have lost every major engagement against for the past 50 years. Our fleet is down to less than 100 ships. We have watched world after world fall. I want to believe you can help us, but I need more than confident words." Lisa nodded. "I understand. Words are cheap, so let me show you what we can do." She tapped her wrist device. "Admiral, are you receiving?" Jake's voice came through the chamber speakers. "Loud and clear, Commander. The Council would like a demonstration. Is the fleet ready?" "We are sending you coordinates now. There is a raiding party approximately 2 light years from here, 30 ships. They have been harassing your supply lines for months according to the data you sent us." His eyes widened. "You are going to attack them now?" "No," Jake said. "We already did. The engagement started 4 minutes ago." Lisa pulled up a new display. It showed a live feed from a human destroyer. On the screen, vessels were burning and breaking apart. Human ships moved through the chaos with brutal efficiency, their weapons tearing through chitin and armor like it was paper. They tried to swarm them, but the humans simply held formation and kept firing. For every shot the swarm landed, the humans landed 100. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, all 30 ships were debris. 30 enemy vessels destroyed, Jake reported. We lost 0 ships, minor damage to 3 destroyers, no casualties. The council chamber was silent. Elle had gone pale. Several others looked like they might be sick. Found his voice. That was one of their larger raiding groups. We lost 12 ships trying to stop them last month. Lisa nodded. Like I said, we are not prey, we are predators, and now they have a bigger predator to worry about. Ben cracked his knuckles, a sound that made the nearest jump. So, when do we start the real fight? Looked at the display at the wreckage of the raiding party and felt something he had not felt in decades. Hope. Immediately, he said. Tell your admiral we are ready. Swarm had conquered 1,000 worlds across 3 galaxies. They had devoured civilizations that had existed for millions of years. They had never known defeat, only the endless hunger of expansion and consumption. They were the terror of the stars, the nightmare that made entire species abandon them and flee into the void rather than face them. They had never encountered anything like humans. Captain Danny Reeves stood on the bridge of the destroyer Relentless and watched the swarm fleet approach on his tactical display. There were over 200 vessels, a mix of carrier ships and drone escorts surrounding 3 massive hive vessels. Intelligence suggested at least 1 queen was aboard. This was the largest engagement of the war so far. All stations report ready, said Lieutenant Kate from the tactical console. She was young, barely 26, but she had been fighting since she was 18 and her eyes had the hard look of a veteran. Good, Danny said. Signal the fleet, attack formation Delta. We hit them fast and we hit them hard. Focus fire on the hive ships. If we can kill that queen, the rest will fall apart. The human fleet numbered just under 100 vessels. They were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. None of them seemed concerned about this. They made the first move. A wave of drone fighters launched from the carriers, thousands of small craft swarming toward the human formation like angry insects. Behind them, the larger ships began charging their organic weapons systems. Drone wave incoming, Kate reported. Estimated contact in 90 seconds. Danny did not flinch. Point defense systems online, let them come. The drones hit the human fleet like a wave crashing against rocks. The point defense guns opened up, filling space with streams of projectiles and energy beams. Drones exploded by the hundreds. The survivors pressed on, slamming into the hulls of the human ships with their acid-coated bodies. Some damage got through. The destroyer Vigilant reported hull breaches on 3 decks. The cruiser Defiance lost a sensor array. But the human ships kept moving, kept firing, kept pushing forward. Breach on Deck 7, the damage control officer reported. Boarding party confirmed, approximately 40 drones. Danny keyed the internal comm. Sergeant Amy Torres, you are up, repel boarders. Already on it, Captain. Deep in the ship, Amy Torres led her squad of Marines through the corridors toward the breach point. She was 32 years old with scars on her arms from a dozen engagements and a calm expression that never changed no matter how bad things got. Her squad moved behind her in tight formation, their rifles up and ready. They found thee in a cargo bay. The drones had torn through the hull plating and were spreading out, their mandibles clicking as they searched for prey. They were nightmarish creatures, 6-legged with armored carapaces and multiple eyes that glowed with alien hunger. Amy did not hesitate, opened fire. The Marines moved like a single organism. They had trained for this. They had fought in conditions that would break most species. They were fast, but the humans were faster. They had claws and acid spit, but the humans had rifles that could punch through armor and grenades that turned corridors into kill zones. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, 40 drones lay dead and not a single Marine had fallen. Amy wiped ichor from her visor and keyed her comm. Bridge, this is Torres. Deck 7 is clear. Send a cleanup crew. Confirmed, Sergeant. Good work. Back on the bridge, Danny watched the main engagement unfold. The human fleet had pushed through the drone screen and was now engaging the capital ships directly. The destroyer Relentless fired a full broadside into a carrier, its tearing through the organic hull and detonating the ammunition stores within. The carrier split apart in a flower of fire. Target destroyed, Kate reported, shifting to secondary target. They were beginning to realize they were losing. Their command structure started sending new orders, trying to reorganize their formation, but the humans did not give them time. Every moment of hesitation was punished with devastating fire. Aboard an observation vessel positioned safely behind the battle line, High watched the engagement with growing disbelief. He had seen many battles in his long life. He had never seen anything like this. The humans fought without fear, not the absence of fear that came from ignorance, but the controlled fear of experienced warriors who had learned to use it as fuel. They took damage and kept fighting. They lost ships and pressed the attack harder. When a boarding party breached the cruiser horizon, the human crew did not panic or flee. They grabbed weapons and met the invaders in the corridors. And they won. How are they doing this? Elle asked from beside him. Her voice was barely a whisper. Shook his head. I do not know, but I am beginning to understand why the old texts warned against waking them. The battle reached its climax when a human strike force broke through to the central hive ship. The heavy cruiser Hammer of Earth led the assault, its forward batteries blazing as it carved a path through the defenders. Behind it came a dozen destroyers, pouring fire into the hive ship's weakening shields. Hull breach confirmed on the hive ship, the sensor officer reported. Human boarding pods are launching. Watched in horrified fascination as the small pods slammed into the hive ship's hull. Each pod carried a squad of human marines. They were willingly throwing themselves into the heart of the enemy vessel, surrounded by thousands of drones, to reach the Queen. They are insane, Elle said. Perhaps, replied, or perhaps this is simply what do. Inside the hive ship, the Marines fought their way through nightmare corridors of organic tissue and chitinous growths. Drones came at them in waves. The humans killed them in waves. They advanced steadily, methodically, like a force of nature that could not be stopped. Lieutenant Nick Harper led the point team. He was 28 years old and had volunteered for this mission knowing the survival odds were low. He did not care. This was what he had trained for. This was what humans did. They found the Queen in a central chamber, a massive bloated creature surrounded by her elite guard. She screeched commands, sending her warriors rushing toward the intruders. Nick raised his rifle. Light her up. The battle lasted 2 minutes. The Queen died screaming. Outside, the effect was immediate. The ships lost coordination. Drones stopped fighting and began wandering aimlessly. Vessels collided with each other. The formation collapsed into chaos. Admiral Jake's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, the Queen is down. Finish them. The human fleet surged forward. By the time it was over, not a single vessel remained. Stood in silence, staring at the field with debris and wreckage. The swarm fleet that had threatened to destroy his civilization was gone, and the humans had lost only 11 ships. They had shown their true nature, and the galaxy would never forget it. The war that had lasted nearly a century changed direction in a matter of weeks. News of the Hive fleet's destruction spread through the collective consciousness like poison. For the first time in their species' memory, the Queens felt something they had only ever inflicted on others. Fear. The creatures from there were not prey. They were predators of the highest order, and they showed no sign of stopping. Admiral Jake stood in the war room aboard his flagship, the carrier Valor's Edge, studying the strategic display. The holographic map showed the entire region, with territory in blue, territory in red, and contested zones in yellow. 3 weeks ago, the map had been mostly red. Now the yellow zones were expanding rapidly as human forces pushed the swarm back on every front. "Intelligence reports confirm it," said Commander Chris Palmer, handing Jake a data pad. "They are pulling back to their core systems. They have abandoned 17 colony worlds in the past week alone." Jake studied the data. "What about the outer territories?" "Stripped, they took what resources they could and burned the rest. Classic scorched earth retreat. They are running scared. Can you blame them? We have killed 4 queens in the past month. Their command structure is fracturing. Individual hive fleets are starting to act on their own without central coordination." Chris paused. "Sir, some of the analysts think we could end this war within the year if we keep up the pressure." Jake nodded slowly, but his expression remained serious. "And what happens after we push them back to there? Do we stop at the border?" Chris did not answer immediately. They both knew what waited in core territory. Millions of enslaved species, billions of beings reduced to livestock or labor, worlds stripped bare to feed the endless hunger of the swarm. "That is above my pay grade, Admiral." "No, it is not. I want your opinion." Chris took a deep breath. "If we stop at the border, they will rebuild. Maybe not this generation or the next, but eventually. They are patient. They have been expanding for millions of years. A temporary setback will not change their nature. If we want to end this permanently, we have to go all the way." Jake set down the data pad. "I agree. Get me a channel to Fleet Command back on Earth. We are going to need more ships." While the human military planned their next campaign, the diplomatic work continued aboard the Council station. Commander Lisa Grant had been assigned as the primary liaison between the two species, and she spent long hours in meetings with High and his advisors. They met in a private chamber overlooking the station's central garden, a dome filled with plants from the found the presence of living things calming, though he noticed Lisa seemed indifferent to the surroundings. She sat across from him in a chair that was slightly too small for her frame, her posture relaxed but alert. "Your people fight without mercy," said. It was not an accusation, merely an observation. "I have watched the combat recordings from the recent engagements. I have seen your soldiers laugh as they enter battle. I have seen pilots volunteer for missions with survival rates below 20%. I have seen wounded Marines refuse evacuation so they can keep fighting." Lisa considered this. "Mercy is a luxury, Anna. Our ancestors learned early that hesitation gets you killed. When a predator is trying to eat you, you do not negotiate. You do not show restraint. You fight until it is dead or you are." "But they are not predators trying to eat you. They are an enemy in a war that was not yours to fight." "It became ours when you called for help." Lisa leaned forward slightly. "Let me tell you something about humans. We are not a peaceful species. We have spent most of our history killing each other over land, resources, ideology, religion, sometimes for no reason at all. We have invented weapons capable of destroying entire planets. We have come within moments of wiping ourselves out more than once." His eyes widened. "This does not sound like a recommendation." "It is not, but it explains why we are so good at war. We have practiced it endlessly. We have refined it into an art form. Every generation produces new warriors who are better trained, better equipped, and more ruthless than the generation before." She paused. "When they attacked your people, they thought they were facing another prey species. They were wrong. They summoned something far more dangerous than themselves." "And what happens when the war is over? What will your people do then?" Lisa smiled slightly. "We will go home, build, grow, explore. The universe is vast and there is so much we have not seen yet. War is what we do when we must, not what we are." "I want to believe that." "Then believe it. We did not come here to conquer you. We came because you asked for help, and helping is the right thing to do." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about Earth's history. There was a time when our nations fought each other constantly, when we divided ourselves into tribes and competed for dominance. But eventually we learned that cooperation was more powerful than competition. We united. We reached for the stars together, joined her at the window, and the violence stopped. The internal violence mostly, but we never lost the capacity for it. We just learned to direct it outward, toward threats that endangered all of us. She turned to face him. They are a threat to everyone, not just your people but every species in this region. They will keep expanding and consuming until there is nothing left, unless someone stops them. And you intend to be that someone. We intend to finish what we started, but we will not do it alone. Lisa reached into her uniform and pulled out a small device. She handed it to. This contains technical specifications for weapons, shields, and ship designs. Everything you need to upgrade your fleet to human combat standards. Looked at the device in his hands. You are giving us your military technology. We are giving you the means to defend yourselves. You called for help once. When this war is over, we want to make sure you never have to call again. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that would have seemed threatening from a human but somehow felt reassuring. The galaxy is full of dangers. They are just one of many. You cannot rely on us to fight every battle for you. You need to become strong enough to face whatever comes next. Closed his fingers around the device. Why? Why help us become stronger? We could become a threat to you someday. Lisa laughed. It was a warm sound, completely at odds with the predator image had formed of humans. You could, and maybe someday you will be powerful enough to challenge us. But I would rather have strong allies than weak dependents. A universe where every species can defend itself is safer for everyone. That is surprisingly idealistic for a species that describes itself as violent and warlike. We are complicated creatures. We carry the capacity for great destruction and great compassion in equal measure. The trick is learning which one to use and when. She headed for the door, then paused. Get your engineers working on those specs. When the next phase of the war begins, I want ships fighting alongside ours. Watched her go. Then he looked down at the device in his hands, holding the key to transforming his people from prey into predators. They had given them a gift. Now it was time to prove they were worthy of it. The final battle for the began at dawn by Galactic Standard Time. 800 human ships and 200 newly upgraded vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They faced the largest concentration of forces ever assembled. Over 3,000 hive ships surrounded the swarm's original planet, the world where the first queen had spawned millions of years ago. The remaining queens had gathered here for a final stand. They knew that if they lost this battle, their species would be finished. Admiral Jake stood on the Bridge of Valor's edge and studied the tactical display. The enemy numbers were daunting, but he had faced worse odds in simulations. The key was the queens. Kill them and the swarm collapsed. Simple in theory, bloody in execution. All ships report ready, Commander Chris Palmer said. Good, signal the fleet. We go in hard and fast. Priority targets are the hive ships. Marines will handle the ground assault once we achieve orbital superiority. Jake paused. This ends today. The battle began with a human torpedo barrage that lit up the void like a second sun. Ships exploded by the dozens. The swarm responded with everything they had, launching waves of drones and organic missiles toward the advancing fleet. Space became a chaos of fire and debris and dying ships. The destroyer Relentless led a strike force toward the largest hive ship in the formation. Captain Danny Reeves had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the assault, as he always did. His crew had been with him for 3 years, and not one of them had requested a transfer despite the constant danger. Taking heavy fire from the port quarter, Lieutenant Kate reported. Her voice was calm despite the explosions shaking the ship, shields holding at 60%. Keep pushing, Danny ordered. We are almost in position. The strike force broke through the outer defenses and unleashed a concentrated barrage on the hive ship. The massive vessel's organic hull cracked and split under the assault. Atmosphere vented into space along with thousands of bodies. "Target is crippled," Kate reported, launching boarding pods. The pods streaked across the gap between ships, carrying squads of Marines into the heart of the dying vessel. Sergeant Amy Torres led the first wave. She had survived more boarding actions than anyone in the fleet and had personally killed 2 queens in previous engagements. This would be her third. They breached the hull and poured into the nightmarish corridors. The interior of a hive ship was nothing like a human vessel. Walls of poolsing organic tissue. Floors covered in secretions that burned through standard boots. Air thick with chemical signals that made human eyes water and throats burn. They came at them in waves. Elite warriors twice the size of normal drones with armor that could stop most weapons. Amy had trained for this. Her squad had trained for this. "Armor-piercing rounds," she ordered. "Aim for the joints and eye clusters." They fought through corridor after corridor, leaving dead behind them. Casualties mounted on both sides. Private Jenny Cole took a claw to the chest and went down. Corporal Sam Wright lost an arm to acid spray but kept fighting with his sidearm in his remaining hand. They found the Queen chamber after 20 minutes of brutal combat. The Queen was ancient, one of the original spawning mothers who had spread the swarm across the stars. She was enormous, filling half the chamber with her bloated body. Her guards surrounded her, hundreds of elite warriors ready to die protecting their mother. Amy keyed her squad channel. "All units converge on my position. We end this now." The final assault was costly. They lost 8 Marines in the first 30 seconds, but humans did not retreat. Humans did not surrender. They pushed forward through the carnage, pouring fire into the Queen's defenders until none remained. Amy stood before the Queen, her rifle aimed at the massive head. The creature's eyes, dozens of them, focused on her with ancient hatred. "Your kind will never stop us," the Queen said through a translator implant. Her voice was a hideous clicking sound that barely resolved into words. "We have existed for millions of years. You are nothing but a brief flash of violence." Amy's finger tightened on the trigger. "Maybe, but this brief flash is going to end you." She fired, the Queen screamed and died. Outside, the effect rippled across the battlefield. The fleet lost coordination as more Queens fell to human boarding parties. Ships began ramming each other. Drones turned on their own allies. The carefully constructed defense collapsed into chaos. On the planet below, human drop pods began their descent. Thousands of armored Marines falling from orbit like meteors, each one carrying enough firepower to level a city block. They hit the ground in the heart of the major hive cities and began the systematic destruction of the remaining Queen chambers. Lieutenant Nick Harper led his platoon through a hive complex that stretched for miles underground. They encountered resistance at every turn, but nothing could stop them. They had never faced enemies who would follow them into their own tunnels, who would fight in close quarters where the swarm should have every advantage. They did not understand that humans had evolved in caves. Darkness and tight spaces were in their blood. The last Queen died at noon by Galactic Standard Time. With her death, the swarm ceased to exist as a coordinated entity. Individual drones continued to fight, but without direction, without purpose. They were just animals now, dangerous but no longer a threat to civilizations. Admiral keyed the fleet-wide channel. His voice was tired but steady. "All ships, the swarm is defeated. Begin search and rescue operations for survivors, ours and theirs. We are not here to exterminate. We are here to win." In the months that followed, the galaxy began to rebuild. Human engineers helped construct new defense platforms throughout space. Human doctors shared medical knowledge that extended by decades. Human teachers trained new generations of warriors in the tactics and strategies that had kept humanity alive on their deadly world. Stood at the dedication ceremony for the new Defense Academy, watching Sergeant Amy Torres run a class of young through combat drills. They moved with confidence he had never seen in his people before. They had learned from the best. Admiral approached him. His uniform was crisp, and his posture was straight despite the exhaustion that showed around his eyes. "We will be leaving soon," Jake said. "Earth needs its fleet home." Bowed his head. "We can never repay what you have done. You do not owe us anything. You sent a call into the void hoping someone would answer. We answered because that is what we do. We protect, we fight, we survive." He extended his hand. "The galaxy is vast and full of threats, but now you know you are not alone in it." Took the hand carefully, feeling the warmth and strength in those 5 fingers. A year ago, this gesture would have terrified him. Now it felt like a promise. "Will you return if we need you again?" Jake smiled. "I hope you never need us again. That is the whole point, but if you do call, we will answer. We always answer." The human fleet departed the following day. Watched from the observation deck as hundreds of ships vanished into the light of faster-than-light travel, returning to there on the far side of the galaxy. They were alone again, but they were not the same people who had sent that desperate beacon into the void. They were stronger now, wiser, more dangerous. They had given them more than victory. They had given them hope, knowledge, and the understanding that prey could become predators if they had the will to change. The galaxy would face other threats. Other enemies would rise to challenge the fragile peace, but they would be ready. And somewhere out there, watching from the far side of the stars, the humans would be ready too. The legacy lived on.